Everyone, my name is Felix. Welcome to week 4 of this week lecture on personality theories. So, we will be looking into Erikson and ego psychology. And that's what we'll be talking about today, Erikson and ego psychology. And now, we'll be looking specifically into Erikson's psychosocial stages, the contribution to lifespan and development readings. Uh, this week we are going to be reading chapter 4 of our test. At the end of the day, you must be critically be able to evaluate Erikson's expansion of psychoanalytic tradition. So please take note of that. This is not going to be an expanded lecture, it's going to be an overview because there are a lot of things to learn from here. But you will do yourself more good to read on your own, not just the recommended text to expound your reading about this. So, by the end of this week, I expect all of you to be able to explain Erikson theory of psychosocial development and its 8 stages. And number 2, Erikson's major contribution to ego psychology and lifespan development. Number 3, you must be able to critically evaluate Erikson's expansion and modification of classical psychoanalytic theory and be able to apply Eriksonian concepts to clinical, pastoral, educational, and cultural context. That is what we are looking forward to. Now, looking at historical and theoretical background, Erikson emerged from the psychoanalytic tradition. He was trained under Hannah Freud, yet he significantly reoriented Freud's framework. He was part of those people who reoriented, who worked, who expanded on Freud's framework. While Freud emphasized psychosexual drives and childhood determinism, Erikson shifted attention to the ego as a creative, adaptive force. Okay? Also, his attention was on the place of social, cultural, and historical influences. Okay? And also development across the entire lifespan. Don't forget that it started from instinct and sexual drive, which Freud based his theory upon. So there has been a lot of deviation from Freud's theory, which is called psychoanalytic tradition. A lot of as you know, as things are opening up, as things were opening up, many people were moving away from Freud's analytical psychoanalytical tradition, and they were expounding on it and making big deal out of it. So Erikson's work marks a kind of transition from drive-centered psychoanalysis to ego-centered psychosocial development. Okay, please take note of that. Drive-centered psychoanalysis to ego-centered psychosocial development. And when we talk about ego psychology based on Erikson orientation, there are core assumptions of ego psychology. Number 1, the ego is autonomous, not merely a servant of the id, right? Ego is autonomous, not merely a servant of the id. Number two, personality develops through interaction between the individual and society. If you notice the lectures we had last week and last 2 weeks, we talked about scholars who moved away from Erikson's theory. And if you notice what Erikson is saying, that our personality is not just coming from our internal drive or psychosexual drive or whatever happened, it's from our relationship with society. So, psychological health involves successful resolution of psychosocial crisis. So, your ability to resolve psychosocial crisis brings you to a level of psychological health, which means if you cannot solve psychosocial crisis, you can't be sound in your psychological health. So Erikson viewed personality as shaped by one, biological maturation. We are talking about development this time across the lifespan. So Erikson viewed personality as shaped by biological maturation. And most times when we talk about biological maturation, there is so much emphasis on physiological, maturation. Number two, social expectations. Social expectation. Number three, cultural institutions. And four, historical context. That is what Erikson, based his personality theories on. That human being, we are not just, imagine, or our personality is not just a product of our internal drives, or what's going on within, is as a result of biological maturation, social expectation, cultural institution, historical context. So this makes his theory particularly relevant for cross-cultural psychology. So, if you listen to the other course, we talked about cross-cultural this week. So by the time you listen to the two lectures, you'll be able to bring them together. All right. So that's make cross-cultural psychology, pastoral counseling, and community mental health relevant. Okay. So looking at Erikson's 8 psychosocial stages. Okay. Each stage presents a psychosocial crisis. That is, at every stage of life, what are the conflicts you are going to be having? What are the crises you are going to be dealing with when it comes to the personality of an individual? He's talking about a tension between two opposing outcomes. Resolution leads to the development of a virtue, which is ego strength. So what is going to be happening at every stage? Now, these stages are very, very important. The first stage, according to Erikson, is a level of trust versus mistrust. Infancy. Okay. At infancy, the question that comes to mind is, can I trust the word? Okay. And the virtue that is built from there is hope for the little ones, So the key influence there is the quality of the caregiving. I don't know if you have seen a little child who is fond of their caregiver. Anyone who plays with children, agbomoju lomo moju. I don't know if you've heard that before. So the quality of the caregiving you give to the children will determine whether they will trust you or they will not trust you. So when you have proven yourself over time, then they can trust you. So every child will go through this stage of trust versus mistrust at infancy. And the central question is, can I trust the world? That's the first stage. Okay. The second stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. That is at the early childhood. So At that point, the question that comes to the mind of that child is, can I do things myself? Can I do things even when you are trying to help them? They still want to do things by themselves. Well, when they now get stuck, they say, "Oh, can you help me?" Okay, that's the central question. Can I do things myself? They have a strong will. That is the virtue. The will is very strong. Okay, and of course, the focus is self-control and independence. They want to gain self-control and they want independence. And this happen at the early childhood. Early childhood. Okay, so the third stage is the stage of preschool. Okay, preschool is a stage three, initiative versus guilt. At this level, the question that comes to their mind is it okay to take initiative? No. And the virtue, they are trying to build this purpose. And the risk there, there's a risk there, is they are overly harsh. And overly harsh discipline there will lead to guilt. And that's why we encourage parents not to use uh, consequences, negative consequences to deal with issues, but they should use positive reinforcement, okay, to deal with issues. So when you are harsh in the name of discipline, it leads to guilt in this stage three, preschool. So stage four is the stage of school age. You know, school age is the stage of industry and inferiority. The question that came to their mind at this point is, can I make it in the world of skills and tasks? Can I make it? They struggle with that a lot. Competency becomes their virtue, will be what they will be pursuing. The contest most of the time for that is school and peer comparison. Okay, we need to take note of that. The stage five is identity versus role confusion. This happened at adolescents. Adolescence. Stage five, identity versus role confusion. The question that comes to mind at that time for them is, who am I? They struggle with identity. And the virtue they are trying to build at that point is fidelity. The key concept for them during this stage is identity crisis. Many people have identity crisis today. When you see people begin to challenge their status or their gender, it's a sign of identity crisis. And of course, central to vocational, spiritual, relational identity. This stage five, is a big stage for any child. And of course, who am I is the main question at that point, according to Erikson. Stage six is intimacy and isolation at young adult. Can I love and commit? Everything is about love. At that point, they want to experiment everything. They want to have sex. They want to do so many things. At that point, they are looking for love. They are looking for so many things. It's a stage of intimacy and sex. And when you have them in your house, they want to be in their room all the time. They don't want to come out of their room. It's you looking for them. When they are in the house, you will not even know they are in the house. They want to just isolate themselves. Can I be left alone? Can I be allowed to be left alone? I've had a lot of that. Can I be left alone? Intimacy versus isolation. Stage seven is known as generativity versus stagnation. This happened at middle adulthood. Middle adulthood. And central question there is that will I contribute to the next generation? Generativity and stagnation versus stagnation. The middle age. Okay, it's about fulfillment. At that point, care becomes their virtue, and They are seen in parenting, mentoring, leadership. See them in ministry. That's the age so many of us came to the ministry. See, at the age many people are struggling with their parenting, they are to begin to raise their own children. Okay? I'm mentoring a lot of people. That's what happened at stage 7. Stage 8 is a stage of integrity versus despair, late adulthood. Central question was my life meaningful? They begin to look back at that stage. It's the age of wisdom. Wisdom is the virtue at that level. This involves life review and acceptance of mortality. At that point, they are thinking beyond this world. What happens to me after this world? That's stage 8. Let's look briefly at Erikson's contribution to lifespan development. As you can see, we moved from infancy to late adulthood. That's what we just dealt with. We call it lifespan. Lifespan ranges from infancy to late adulthood, according to Erikson. What are the key innovations in Erikson's contribution? Number one, Erikson introduced that development does not end in childhood, that we will continue to develop to the end of our lives. And in psychology, we believe that brain also continue to change. We call it plasticity of the brain. Plasticity of the brain. The ability of the brain to change from time to time to time to time to time. So development goes beyond childhood. We continue to develop from time to time. Number two, adult and elderly stages are psychological meaningful. Okay, that is another thing that Erikson is coming up with, that adults and elderly stage are psychological meaningful. Number three, identity formation is dynamic and ongoing. Okay, the question of who am I is a progressive question. It's not just one time. It continues to emerge as we grow, as we grow, as we grow. Identity formation is dynamic and ongoing. Number four, culture. Our culture plays a central role in shaping personality. As you can see in our society, in Africa, society raise children, not just parents. That's where we form, because there's some things you can't do it when people are looking at you. You say, people must not see me doing this. Okay, we are, in Africa, we are society driven, and that shapes a lot of our belief. And I think maybe Erikson is from Africa, because what Erikson is saying, you know, speaks a lot with Africa and some part of Europe. That culture plays a central role in shaping personality. This framework has influenced, and gave birth to what we call developmental psychology today, counseling and psychotherapy, education, theology and pastoral care, gerontology, and social work. That is what we got from the work of Erikson. All right. So, between Erikson and Freud, let me quickly do a critical comparison. Freud is talking about psychosexual stages, while Erikson is talking about psychosocial stages. Freud is talking about childhood focused, but Erikson is talking about lifespan focus. Number three, Freud is talking about biologically driven. We are biological driven, driven as an individual. While Erikson is saying social and culture are forces that drive, you know, human being. And the last one, ego, is a mediator for Freud. While ego is an adaptive organizer. So Erikson retains psychoanalytic insight, but reframes it in a way that is less deterministic, more relational, and more culturally sensitive. Okay, let's look at the critical evaluation of Erikson's theory. What are the strengths and the limitations? Strengths and limitations of Erikson's theory. Number one, look, let's consider strength first. Erikson's theory integrates psychology with sociology and anthropology. When you talk about anthropology, I hope you know it's a study of man, okay? And sociology, study of society, social construct. Psychology, study of human mind. So, what combined the three together is Erikson's theory. Number two, another strength of Erikson's theory is that it's applicable across culture and professions. Okay, different cultures, different professions. Number three, clinically and pastorally useful. We use it in the clinic today, and we use it also in pastoral ministry. And number four, it emphasizes meaning, identity, and purpose. So many people are lost. I've been in the clinic and seen a lot of people who are being lost. Who am I? They keep asking the question of who am I? What is my identity? Does life make meaning? What is the purpose? People keep talking a lot about this. What are the limitations? So quickly, let's look at limitations. Stages may be overly linear. The stages may be linear, just straight from infancy to preschool, preschool to school, school to adolescent, adolescent to young adult to adult. It's just linear. Concepts can be difficult to operationalize, can be difficult to make use of. Limited empirical testing compared to trait theory, empirical, that is, you know, scientific, being scientific, it's limited in scientific, it's not subjected so much empirical investigation, unlike trait theories. Okay, and the last one there in this limitation is the cultural assumptions may not universally apply. Cultural assumptions. There are a lot of assumptions, you know, not universally apply. That's part of the limitation of Erikson's work. For clinical, pastoral, and educational application, counseling, it helps in dealing with identity crisis, life transitions, and aging. In pastoral care, in faith development, in vocation, in meaning making. When it comes to education, it helps to understand student motivation and self concepts. And in leadership, generativity, mentoring, legacy. That is the application. That's what we got from there. So Erikson's theory is especially valuable in integrative and holistic models of care. Quickly, let me round up because I don't want this video to be long. Let me just give you the summary and the key takeaways from there. Erikson expanded psychoanalysis beyond instincts to identity and society. Number two, personality development spans the entire lifespan that will develop from infancy to late adulthood. And next one, ego strengths emerge through successful crisis resolution. Okay, and his work bridges psychology, culture, and meaning. So let me throw this question to you. In what ways does Erikson improve upon Freud's model? That's the question I will throw to you for reflection. Number two, is identity ever fully resolved or is it continually renegotiated? Number three, how might Erikson stages apply differently across culture? And the last question for reflection, what psychosocial stage is most relevant in pastoral or clinical practical or practice today? Which psychosocial stage is most relevant in pastoral or clinical practice today? So until I come across your way again, I hope you will listen to this and pick. This is just to boost you, it's just to help you to kick you start, you know, so that you'll be able to read and read your text and take out major thing from it. Please don't forget what you are taking away from this class is very important, all right? And I hope you are following personality theories. We are talking about the perspective of scholars about personality. At the end, one of the major paper you will write for me is that you're going to pick maybe one of these scholars, you're going to write on them your perspective about their theories and another thing that you can write about it. I'm going to give you details about that later on. So, but for now, let's keep learning. I will talk to you again. Take care, everyone.